Elon Musk just stunned these students at the Y Combinator Entrepreneurship College about his experience in the government, about AI, Tesla, economies. Some of the interesting things that he was talking about in this interview was actually mind-blowing. And I gotta give a big shout out to Platin Bhuta here for recording this in his school while Elon Musk was being interviewed by the interviewee. Shout out to him, man. Everyone should go follow him. He's an engineer, awesome guy. Shout out to you, my man. So enjoy this whole video. It is time stamped, so you can skip to whichever part of the video that you guys find interesting, and as well as the audio is better. So let's get down to it. Get your popcorn and enjoy.
This is a room full of 18 to 25-year-olds. It skews younger because the founder set is younger and younger. Can you put yourself back into their shoes when you were 18, 19? You're learning the code, even coming up with a first idea for Zip2. What was that like for you?
Back in '95, I was faced with a choice of either do grad studies, PhD at Stanford in material science, actually working on ultracapacitors for potential use in electric vehicles, essentially trying to solve the range problem for electric vehicles, or try to do something, this thing that most people have never heard of called the internet. I talked to my professor, who was Bill Nix, the material science department, and said, can I defer for a quarter because this will probably fail, and then I'll need to come back to college. And then he said, this is probably the last conversation we'll have. And he was right. So, but I thought things would most likely fail, not that they would most likely succeed. And then in '95, I wrote basically, I think the first or close to the first maps, directions, internet, white pages, and yellow pages on the internet. I just wrote that personally, and I didn't use a web server. I just read the book directly. Couldn't afford, couldn't afford a T1. Original office was on Sherman Avenue in Palo Alto. There was like an ISP on the floor below, so I drilled a hole through the floor and just ran a LAN cable directly to the ISP. My brother joined me and another co-founder, Greg Curry, who passed away. At the time, we couldn't even afford a place to stay, so the office was $500 a month, so we just slept in the office and then showered at the YMCA on Pejjy in El Camino. Yeah, and I guess we ended up doing a little bit of a useful company, Zip2 in the beginning. We did build a lot of really good software technology, but we were somewhat captured by the legacy media companies in that Night River, New York Times, and Hearst, whatnot, were investors and customers, and also on the board. So they kept wanting to use our software in ways that made no sense. I wanted to go direct to consumer. So anyway, it's a long story, dwelling too much on Zip2, but I really just wanted to do something useful on the internet. Because I had two choices, do a PhD and watch people build the internet, or help build the internet in some small way. And I was like, well, I guess I can always try and fail and then go back to grad studies. It ended up being reasonably successful. It sold for $300 million, which was a lot at the time. These days, that's I think the minimum impulse bid for an AI startup is $1 billion. It's there's so many freaking unicorns. It's like a herd of unicorns at this point. Yeah, for unicorns, $1 billion situation.
There's been inflation since, so quite a bit more money actually.
But the high level of AI is pretty intense, as you've seen. You see companies that are, less than a year old getting sometimes $1 billion or multi-billion dollar valuations, which I guess could pan out and probably will pan out in some cases. But it is eye-watering to see some of these valuations. Yeah, what do you think?
I'm pretty bullish, honestly. So I think the people in this room are going to create a lot of the value that 1 billion people in the world should be using this stuff, and we're scratching the surface of it. I love the internet story in that even back then, you are a lot like the people in this room back then, in that the heads of all the CEOs of all the legacy media companies look to you as the person who understood the internet And a lot of the world, the corporate world, like the world at large that does not understand what's happening with AI, they're going to look to the people in this room for exactly that. It sounds like, what are some of the tangible lessons? It sounds like one of them is don't give up board control, or be careful about, have a really good lawyer.
I guess my first startup, the mistake was having too much shareholder and board control from legacy media companies, who then necessarily see things through the lens of legacy media, and that they'll kind of make you do things that seem sensible to them, but really don't make sense with the new technology. And I should point out that I didn't actually at first intend to start a company. I tried to get a job at Netscape. I sent my resume to Netscape, and Mark Hendricks knows about this. But I don't think he ever saw my resume, and then nobody responded. So, and then I tried hanging out in the lobby of Netscape to see if I could bump into someone, but I was too shy to talk to anyone, so I'm like, man, this is ridiculous. So I'll just write something for myself and see how it goes. So it wasn't actually from the standpoint of I want to start a company, I just want to be part of building, the internet in some way. And since I couldn't get a job at an internet company, I had to start a internet company. AI will so profoundly change the future, it's difficult to fathom how much. The economy, assuming things don't go awry, and AI doesn't kill us all in itself, then you'll see ultimately an economy that is not 10 times more than the current economy. Ultimately, if we become, say, for whatever our future machine descendants, or mostly machine descendants, become a cottage of scale 2 civilization or beyond, we're talking about an economy that is thousands of times, maybe millions of times bigger than the economy today.
Okay, I don't want to interrupt, but I gotta talk about it here. This is insane. Elon's talking about the economy could be 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times bigger than today, totally depending on machines. You know what he's talking about, guys, right? He's talking about humanoid robots, bots, Optimus bots. He sees this, guys. That's the crazy. He sees this. And you know why this will happen? Is because of the total global GDP. Once you got bots in the system, that is gonna scale. You can do anything 10 to 100 times faster, easier, and less cost. That's going to increase productivity massively and increase GDP insanely. I don't think we're ready for this. As well as we have autonomous robotaxis, that's also gonna, contribute a lot. So if this is mind-blowing.
I did sort of feel a bit when I was in DC, taking a lot of flack for getting rid of waste and fraud. And it's really mentioned, when you get rid of waste and fraud, it's not those you're stopping the money from receiving the money admit that they were getting waste and fraud. They actually claim oh no, we were saving the baby panda. It's no, you weren't. You were stealing money. Okay, so they get a lot of flack from this. So I was in DC with this which was an interesting side quest.
Gotta get back to the main quest.
Yeah, I gotta get back to the main quest here. So back to the main quest. But I just a little bit this. It's fixing the government is kind of there's say the beach is dirty and there's some needles and feces and trash and you want to clean up the beach. But then there's also this 1,000-foot wall of water, which is a tsunami of AI. And how much does cleaning the beach really matter if you got a 1,000-foot tsunami about to hit? Not that much.
Okay, we're glad you're back on the main quest. Very important.
Yeah, back to the main quest. Building technology, which is what I like doing. Also in DC, you build politics, people just lie all the time. It's pretty. It's just a high. It's just so much noise. The signal noise ratio in politics is terrible. So.
I live in San Francisco, so you don't need to tell me twice.
Yeah, DC. I guess it's all politics in DC, but if you're trying to build a rocket or cars, or you're trying to have software that compiles and runs reliably, then you have to be maximally truth-seeking, or your software or your hardware won't work. You can't fool math. Like math and physics are rigorous judges. So I'm used to being in like a maximally truth-seeking environment, and that's definitely not politics. So I'm good. Glad to be back in technology.
All right, last time I'm going to jump in here, guys, because this is a big deal. Elon is back. He is back. He is back at his companies. No more politics. He's learned the hard way. Whether it's Democrats or Republicans, they're going to do what they got to do. He did what he could do. And now it's time to focus on his companies, and he's back, and he's going to be doing what he does best, which is technology. Let's flippin' go!
I guess I'm kind of curious, going back to the Zip2 moment, you had hundreds of millions of dollars, or you had an exit of worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
I got $20 million.
Right. Okay, so you solved the money problem. And you basically took it and you kept rolling with X.com,
Yeah.
PayPal, and Confinity.
Yes. I kept the chips on the table.
Yeah.
So
not everyone does that. A lot of the people in this room will have to make that decision, actually. What drove you to jump back into the ring?
Well, I think I felt with Zip2, we built like incredible technology, but it never really got used. I think, at least from my perspective, we had better technology than, say, Yahoo or anyone else, but it was constrained by our customers. So I wanted to do something we would be constrained by our customers, go direct to consumer, and that's what ended up being like X.com, PayPal, essentially X.com merging with Infinity, which together created PayPal, and then that actually the sort of PayPal diaspora, it might have created more companies than probably anything in the 21st century. So many talented people were at the combination of Confinity and X.com. So I just wanted to, I felt like kind of got our wings clipped somewhat with Zip2, and it's like, okay, what if our wings aren't clipped and we go direct to consumer? And that's what people ended up being. I got that $20 million check for my share of Zip2. At the time, I was living in a house with 4 housemates, and had $10 grand in the bank. And then this check arrives in the mail, of all places, in the mail. And now my bank balance went from 10,000 to 20 million to 10,000. You're like, well, okay. So I have to pay taxes on that a little bit. Then I ended up putting almost all of that into X.com. And yes, you said right, just kind of keeping almost all the chips on the table. Then after PayPal, I was like, well, I was kind of curious as to why we had not sent anyone to Mars. And I went on the NASA website to find out when we're sending people to Mars, and there was no date. I thought maybe it's just hard to find on the website, but in fact, there was no real plan to send people to Mars. So then, this is such a long story, so I don't want to take up too much time here, but
I think we're all listening with rapt attention. I'm looking out on the audience. I'm pretty sure there are.
Sure. I mean, it's so I was on the Long Island Expressway with my friend DRS, and we were housemates in college. And DRS asked me what we're going to do. Well, what am I going to do after PayPal? And I was like, I don't know. I guess maybe I'd like to do something philanthropic in space, because I don't think I could actually do anything commercial in space, because that seems like the purview of nations. But I'm kind of curious as to when we're going to send people to Mars, and that's when I was like, oh, it's on the website, and I started digging. There's nothing on the NASA website, so then I started digging in, and I'm definitely summarizing a lot here, but my first idea was to do a philanthropic mission to Mars called Life to Mars, where we send a small greenhouse with seeds of dehydrated nutrient gel, land that on Mars and grow, hydrate the gel, and then you'd have this great sort of money shot of green plants on a red background. For the longest time, by the way, I didn't realize money shot, I think, is a porn reference, but But anyway, the point is that that would be the great shot of green plants on a red background, and to try to inspire, NASA and the public to send astronauts to Mars. And as I learned more, I came to realize, along the way, by the way, I went to Russia in like 2001 and 2002 to buy ICBMs, which is like, that's an adventure. You go and meet with Russian high command and say, I'd like to buy some ICBMs.
This was to get to space. As a rocket.
Not to nuke anyone. But they had to, as a result of arms reduction talks, they had to actually destroy a bunch of their big nuclear missiles. So I was like, well, how about if we take two of those, minus the nuke, add an additional upper stage for Mars. But it was kind of trippy, being in Moscow in 2001, negotiating with like the Russian military to buy ICBMs. Like, that's crazy. But they kept also raising the price on me, so like literally it's kind of like the opposite of what a negotiation should do. So I was like, man, these things are getting really expensive, and I came to realize that actually the problem was not that there was insufficient will to go to Mars, but that there was no way to do so without breaking the budget, breaking the NASA budget. So that's where I decided to start SpaceX to advance rocket technology to the point where we can send people to Mars. And that was in 2002.
So that wasn't, you didn't start out wanting to start a business. You wanted to start just something that was interesting to you, that you thought humanity needed. And then as you sort of, like a cat pulling on, a string, it just sort of the ball sort of unravels. It turns out this is could be a very profitable business.
I mean, it is now, but there's been no prior example of really a rocket startup succeeding. There have been various attempts to do commercial rocket companies, and they all failed. So again, with SpaceX, starting SpaceX was really from the standpoint of like, I think there's like a less than 10% chance of being successful